Hey folks, welcome to this hopefully quick look at Worldographer. I'm the creator of the program. This is Worldographer 2025. This is our preview demo version. We are currently doing a crowdfunding campaign on BackerKit to support the further development of the program. So we appreciate it. If you find the tool useful, if you want to see it go even further, please do consider backing it. We'll have a link to it in the comments on the video here. And it wraps up, I believe, October 8th or thereabouts. So if you can check it out before that and support us, please do. And so this video is going to focus on creating rivers and coasts in Worldographer. There have been a bunch of changes to it. There's also a bunch of things that people don't know about that have been in the tool for a while as well. In the previous version, Worldographer goes back, to 2017, I believe, or 2018 at least. So what I've got here is a randomly created world in the classic tile set, if you will, and I had already auto-generated coasts and rivers using shapes. And we'll go over that in a moment, but I did want to dive into the video to kind of get to the action, if you will. And I'm zooming in here. All of these, like I said, are shapes, so if you want to edit them, you can go to the shapes drawer and you can hit select, and you can see the points that make up this line. Now, minor but really makes the maps look a whole lot better improvement is the fact that your rivers actually do narrow at the origin and get wider towards the mouth. That's not something, in Worldographer pre-2025 version. It's just a straight or a consistent thickness line, I should say. So you can click any of these points though, and this river, this effect is being done by making this river a series of segments that get about 10% wider as you get towards the origin, and you can move any of these points around if you want to. And another thing to point out is that it does, when the auto generator is placing your rivers, it is going to try to look at the terrain and the elevations and kind of go downhill. So that's why you can see this is actually going mountain, mountain, hill, 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 and then kind of flat, and if you pull up the data on each of those, so we can hit select and we can select a particular hex, and if you notice, you got a very fine yellow line around it. It's hard to see, and I should put it on my to-do list to make that more prominent when a shape is, or when a hex is selected. But point being is that the elevation here is 9,000. We're saying feet. I suppose you could claim meters if you wanted to. You can have, of course, in a fantasy world you can have any height you want. But certainly you can have a mountain that's 10,000 feet high. That's not outside the bound, or even 30,000 feet high. That's not outside the bounds of reality. So and then this one here, is probably going to be about the same. So even though it's going downhill, it is allowing for some tolerance. I don't know if that's 10% or 15% or what exactly is allowing for the tolerance. Just knowing that each of these hexes is going to have high and low spots throughout, so it doesn't have to go completely downhill strictly, because we can say, well, hey, this, even though the average here is 9,300 feet, the parts that the river goes through, there's some sort of valley inside of those mountains. It's kind of going between some of the mountains or whatever. And then we go down here, 2,800, 1,900, 2,300 again, that tolerance, if you will, and then down. Okay, so so that's what it's doing with the rivers, and as I said, those are shapes, and it's a collection of probably about 10 shapes that get the effect of having that narrow end and wide end. Let's move on to the coasts, which are also done by shapes, and even for lakes, the same effect happens. And there's a checkbox to turn the adjacent water hexes into sea, the hexes that are adjacent to land to sea, and so that's how you get this effect. It happens automatically, and you'll see that in a moment as well. So all of these are shapes, and so I can just go to the shapes drawer and hit select there as well, and I can then pick this here and move any of those points around, or I can delete that And if I wanted to, I can then, go to polygon, and I can stick in, my own shape if I wanted to. I can do that. Or I can delete that if I don't want that. And I can also right click on the hex, and I can say generate a coastline here. And it pops one in there. Now here it just didn't stick out very far at this area. It kind of went shoop to line up with that part of the hex, but that's done. And so I like this effect on my hex maps. I like to have the hexes not match up with the borders of. I like to have my coast not match up directly with the borders of the hexes. Quick aside: there's in Dragonlance, in early Dragonlance, a lot of the maps didn't have that. All of your coasts kind of did match up with the hex borders. And so I remember that the gnomes, they are tinker gnomes. They're very engineering-like for the most part, and they have life quests where they have some engineering or science thing that they're supposed to research as part of their life quest. And one of them had the quest of figuring out why all the land masses, the coasts matched up or were hex shaped, and I thought that was hilarious. Anyway. So we've got those. Oh, one more aside on the rivers. Let me see if I can find a good example real quick. Otherwise, we'll do it for our next one. We'll find an example in the next map if we don't see one here. So here, for example. So occasionally you're going to run into places where, hey, this river here. Was drawn and it was going to this this water hex here, but it didn't, it just picked a random spot within that particular hex, and it didn't quite, once the coastline got added in, that random spot doesn't reach far enough into the water. So occasionally, even though the generator is getting you 95% of the way there, occasionally you're going to have to edit the line, pick it, and drag a point or two here and there to kind of fix things like that. So just be aware. So the generators, are getting you 90-something% of the way there, but you're going to have to take a look at the results and kind of tweak things as you need to. So that's a river going into a very small lake. In fact, in this case, you might even want to edit that coast and make it so that this lake becomes larger, for example. All right, let's move on to another style of map and another style of, or at least another style of river. Let's do the other river and coast style. So here, this time around, same map icon set, but we're going to do a classic sea blue features for our coasts. Yes, we will convert the coastal ocean hexes into sea, and then we're going to generate rivers, and we're going to generate them as features. Hit generate map. And so it's doing its work, going through and placing all of these rivers and so forth. And after a moment, we get rivers in this style and coasts in this style. And so it's to me, it's kind of, especially before the narrowing of the rivers in this style were a lot prettier. Now I think it's kind of a wash, myself, personally. Now, if you have a preference one way or the other, well, that's why we have them available. The coastlines here are a good match for these rivers, though, especially so if you're going to use features for your coastlines. And I do think that those are still prettier. Yeah, so same things apply, except for that these are features. So the same algorithm gets used to create the rivers, but they are features, and so you can pick that feature, and if you think that this is winding around too much, you can select it and hit the delete key to delete it, or the trash there to trash it, and then we can go to classic water here, and we can find other river segments. We've got a number, like probably 4 with different twistiness to them that allow you to for all the different clock position combinations, especially, but you are going to have to rotate things. So, this is going from the one that, well, let me select it. So this one that's selected is going from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock. But if you needed to go from like 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, you can just rotate it 60 degrees and it would do that. In fact, right now, this one here, we're going to use this one here to be straighter than the one we're replacing, if I remember which one was being used before. But the point is you can replace it with any of these so that match up, that are straight in this case. So by default, it goes from 12 to 6. But we do need to rotate that by 120 degrees in order to get it to match how it needs to go. So this is the process that you would go through if you wanted to change up the rivers or hand place them all yourself. One other thing that I'll say is, for this, we do have this river and ocean, or in this case it's a lake coastline that are kind of overlapping. And we don't need, that little coastline, if you will. So I can just delete it. I can drag it away to make sure I'm selecting the right one, because when things are on top of each other, sometimes you're not sure which one is on top. So I like to click it, drag it aside, make sure I've got the right one, and then delete it, and then move it. Or if it was the other way around, then I would delete the other and move the other back into place. When we have coastlines that are done as features, it's the same thing. They're right here, and we do give you again a handful of options for each of these. Like, for example, this deep cove, if you will, or deep bay, or whatever you want to get. It's deep as far as it juts far into the hex. If that's not what you wanted, you can hit the delete key. Select it, hit delete, or hit the trash button up there. And if you wanted something that doesn't jut in as far, then you can pick that and put it down. So that is the features, using features for your coasts and rivers. And again, you can mix and match. If you prefer to have it with the rivers one way and shapes the other way, you can do that. You can also we're gonna dive into another option though. So now we're gonna do the isometric style maps. And so here we're going to generate an isometric style map, and in this case I'm not going to do these settings here. I'm going to show you that you can do them with a map that's already been created. Like it says down here on the bottom, these can be used via the generate menu when the map is open. So we're going to do that. Let me hit press the button fully. Somehow it didn't hit my click. I guess I didn't click well enough. So it generated the map here. You can zoom out some just so you get a better feel for what it looks like. And now we can go up to generate though, and we can generate the coasts. And in this case, it's going to ask us, hey, do you want to use the isometric features for the coast, which will match the isometric icons a little bit better, or we can use classic sea blue, but that's not going to match as well. Your water, if you will, is not going to be textured if you pick this. Whereas if you pick this, you're going to get a textured water, which is going to match. And then we can also use colored polygons. And the colored polygons, I'm going to pick that first. So we're going to convert all the adjacent water hexes to sea, and we're going to do the colored polygons just to show what they look like. So we hit OK, and you can see up here it's going through the whole map. It's 50, or close to 50%. Now it's 50% of the way through. And so it's calculating, it's finding all of the coastal locations, and then it's figuring out how many land terrain pieces are next to each one, and then figuring out which or creating a little polygon in this case to match each, and that just takes a little bit of time, but we're 90% of the way there already. And there we have it. So it changed that water to sea, and then it adds those little strips of land, and it's just using the default base. This is giving you green strips because it's just falling back on a grassy kind of coast, if you will, for that. But when you get into your forest areas, it does have the matching forest there, and even your mountains here. It's got a matching texture for that. So again, these are just done as shapes, so we can go ahead and hit select and pick a shape, and we could delete it, and we can right click and just like what I was showing you before, generate coastline here, and it's going to create a different one. So that's that. Now I can go up, like I said before, I can go ahead and delete all coast, which is going to take them all away, even the new one, because the new one had the right tag on it. And because we could have done undo as well, which would have also undone the coastal change, but we're going to keep that coastal or that C hex change anyway. So we'll go ahead and generate coast again this time. And this time we're going to do them as the isometric features. And this gives you this look. Now the isometric features, we kind of have two different versions of each, and this area here does show it. So all of the, we give you several different ways that it's cut in. And this is just using a water feature that covers up a part of the hex. And it looks and it sees how many adjacent hexes are land and how many are water, and figures out the right shape to pick and the right rotation to pick it. If we go into features here, and if we go to, maybe it's all in isometric region. I scroll down, yeah, so in isometric region, here we have all of these. And with these, they're also rotated, just like, actually I didn't point this out with the classics, but there are rows and columns versions of them, because right now we're in the columns orientation of our map, and so certain shapes will work. Oh, I'm sorry. So in classic, this is less of a problem, because in classic, the hex shape is a true hex, and so we're able to reuse the same ones. It's just a matter of the same features, but we just rotate them 30 degrees if we need to. If you're in the rows orientation versus the coast or versus the columns orientation, we just rotated 30 degrees extra, and that's how we can use the same shapes, or the same features, I should say, for that. But for this style map, and if we're going to use features for it, we have a compressed hex, if you will, and so we can't do that. So we have to give you rows and columns versions of each, for each number of sides that might be water versus land. And then we also cut in by differing amounts, because we don't want it to always use the same one. So we give you a couple of options in each case built into the tool. And actually there's a coastal icon map pack set that actually gives you even more options. So if you want to have more variety, you can look for that coastal map pack, and particularly for the isometric features, it does work very well. And then in addition to having, these you've got a sandy coast version of each, and then you've got a rocky coast version of each. And basically, if the terrain is mountain or hills or a couple of others, it's going to pick the rocky version, and then if not, it's going to pick the sandy version. And there's no reason why you can't swap those out by hand if you want to, but the algorithm by default does it that way. So that's coastal features in the isometric maps. Let's generate. Now for this, we don't have built into the tool features that match this style, and if you were to use features, it would be using the classic style, and those shapes are not optimized for this shape of your hex, this squished hex, if you will, so it would not look good. You're going to have to go with shapes, and you can do classic if you wanted to just have a flat blue, but you're going to be better off going with the textured, because that's going to have a color that's going to match the C color here. So we hit OK, and it's going through and it's trying to place them all, and this fails. It's picking random spots, and it's trying to go downhill and everything, and it's trying to make sure that it gets at least a length of, I think, 3 hexes for each, and so forth. So all those things mean that there's going to be some failures where it's going to pick one and pick a location and it doesn't work. So here is what you get, and in this case, so for example here, I might, I'll probably, again, this is a demo, you're going to have some some minor idiosyncrasies and bugs and so forth. So in this case, I might pick this. I don't know if it's going to make more sense for me to move the shape or move the. Yeah, but let's move the shape. Let's see what that does for us. So right now the shape is on the rivers layer, and if we wanted to, we can move that up to features, and then it will be above, just so that that mouth is up above that coastline there. So if you want it now, you could also argue that there's some sort of little shoal type thing going on there or something like that. So you could leave it as is. You can also not worry about it except for in the area of the map that you're using. If you're generating a whole world, oftentimes your campaign area is just going to be 10% or 5% of that. So you can just tweak all these things in the 5% that matter, and then do the rest later. So that is, and all the same stuff applies for the other shape line rivers that we had done. Where we can tweak you can move these around. If you don't like this sharp bend here, you can bring it back some. You might need to move this point here because it might not get far enough into a hex or some things like that. All that still applies here. But I'm actually looking over, and it's already 21 minutes, and all I'm talking about is rivers and how to tweak them and how the different options and everything. So looking to wrap up, to be blunt. And so I think we'll leave it there. I think that does, though, cover all of the different shape and feature options for creating coasts and rivers in Worldographer 2025, and does highlight the big new issue, or the big new improvement of this line tapering down as you get closer to the origin, or growing wider as you get closer to the beginning. So again, hope that that's helpful to you. We are crowdfunding the next version, Worldographer 2025. Do go over to that crowdfunding page. There's a link to the demo to download that and give it a try and play with all these things yourself. If you run into showstopper bugs, or even minor bugs, or minor things that you want to see improved, let us know. We're actually going to be putting together throughout the crowdfunding campaign polls, probably weekly, or maybe slightly faster than weekly, where you can vote on what new features we're going to be adding. And the earlier you back, the more of those polls that you'll get to participate in. Because right now we're still on, as I'm recording this, we're at day 2 of the crowdfunding campaign, so there's quite a ways to go, and you're likely to be able to vote in 3 or 4 polls if you're backing sooner than later. Okay, so again, that's Worldographer 2025. I hope the tool is able to help you make some great looking maps. Thanks a bunch. Bye.